Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Morning Show, the top morning show in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines and, most importantly, provide some actual insight into what a lot of this information means. As a lot of you who tune in all the time can see, I proudly fly the American flag behind me every single day, not only because are we the greatest country on earth, but I'm living my American dream. I want to help each and every one of you guys live your American dream as well. I do have a very special guest for you guys today. I'm going to bring him up here in a second. But before we do any of that, I got to give a shout out to my friends over at VHub, you guys, vhubapp.com. Doesn't matter if you're a broker, carrier, or shipper alike. We all need access to trailers at some point in time. And the best part about what VHub's doing, and this is especially if you're a small fleet, you never have to shut your operation down now if you have a trailer in the shop. And even better, you get paid to move these trailers for them. So with what they're working on right now, they have Paragould, Arkansas going up to Delta, British Columbia, and you get paid $18.50 to move that trailer. That's on top of the freight that you can get by loading it out. They also have San Diego, California going out to Selma, Texas. You're going to get paid $1,500 to move that trailer. They also have San Diego, California going to Millbury, Ohio. You get $600 US to move that. And then for all my friends up there in Canada, Milton, Ontario to Montreal, Quebec, 250 Canadian to move that trailer. So again, you guys hit them up, vhubapp.com. My friends Xavier Campos and Stacy Steen, they'll be in the audience. Give them a shout. Let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. Zach Williams, what's up, man? Zach's with SPI Logistics, you guys. If you want to become a freight agent, hit him up. Pat Green, what's up, baby? Happy hump day. Let's fucking go. You are right, man. Sonny Sharma, good fucking morning. Let's go. Orange Shirt Gang in the house. That's right, you guys. Everybody's an Orange Shirt Gang member, and you're on this show. Good morning, John. He's coming in from North Texas. All right. I'm going to bring him on right now, you guys. You guys are familiar with him. His product is coming up pretty hot all over the place. Mr. Jordan Graft. What's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, man, I'll take Gaft. I like that, Chris. That'll work, dude. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I was pulling it up, and I was like, I didn't see the R. My brain works faster than my mouth sometimes, Jordan.
I hear you, man. I'm the same way. Thanks for having me, man.
No, absolutely. So for those of the people out there who are going to be listening to this who may not know who you are, I kind of like, this is my leading question with everybody. How'd you get your start in the industry, and like, what are you working on right now?
Yeah, man, my background's actually in banking. I work for places like JP Morgan, financial services, and then I'm also a nerd. So I'm a software developer, ran a development firm here in Dallas, Ruby on Rails shop, about 30 people working for me. I got started in the industry when I took over TriumphPay. So my brother, who CEO of Triumph Bank, they had this product called TriumphPay, and they were looking for someone to come run it, and I wanted to run a product. And so started there in 2018, ran that for 4 years, grew that to about $15 billion in payment volume, and then left to start Highway here in January of this year. So, and no, my brother didn't fire me. Everyone asked me, "Did your brother fire you?" Like, no, that'd make awkward Thanksgiving. We're still good.
I mean, my brother would fire me like without hesitation. So you must have a better relationship with your brother than I ever had.
Yeah, that's right. But excited. Yeah, Highway's about carrier identity. You know, a lot of the challenges we face in this industry, man. Dispatcher services, people pretending to be carriers that they're not. I saw one earlier where people are changing one letter in an email address to try and pretend to be a carrier. Like, the solution to all that starts with just better carrier identity and answering the question, who's really hauling your freight, by understanding, who are you? Are you really the carrier? And what equipment does the carrier actually have?
Okay. So let's talk about that verification, because you bring up that. I mean, that was a prime example. I saw that yesterday because it was somebody who they changed one word on an email address. And is that what Highway points out? Like, is it if they try and get set up with that carrier, or as that carrier, it notices like, hey, this email is not aligned with their actual MC and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. So let's just talk about like the second question I said, are they really the carrier? And this gets down to carrier authorization. And it's an incredibly hard topic, right? So what it takes to authorize a one truck fleet, no inspections, 3 months authority, is completely different what it takes to authorize and validate a 30 truck fleet that's, got all kinds of digital footprint out there. And so Highway uses this dynamic engine to make a decision in real time based on the carrier's digital footprint to ask the right question. So for those users, they're not going to be able to get through without without having access to the right contact points for that carrier.
Okay. So then, I mean, because I know, like, obviously, so I saw Jordan's presentation at the TIA, and so for me, it's like it also takes another level further, where it's like it's verifying that, like, if they have 10 power units and 10 reefer trailers, it's verifying that that is a real thing. And you do that. Was it through the insurance company?
Yeah, so on the fleet analytics, that equipment piece, so there's a lot of different sources going into it. Things like DMV data, insurance data, ELD data, DOT data is in there as well. We're using a lot of that data to create what does the carrier's actual fleet look like today. And it's also the separate lens too, Chris. So it's like, hey, I may have 50 power units, but my scheduled auto only covers 2 of them. What's the opportunity to stop and ask a question? What's really going on here? You're probably dealing with a very high level of leased on carriers, and that's a high risk situation. That's where a lot of, you could run into claims that aren't going to be covered under that cargo policy because it's not on the equipment that's listed on the insurance. So helping people like proactively identify those things before the carrier gets in the network, and then continually monitor them after they're in the network.
So, I mean, yeah, because that brings up a very valid point about that. If they only have 2 actual policy, trucks on their policy, and then they have 48 leased on owner operators, you need to pull the lease agreement. You need to pull a lot of that stuff to verify that that is actually an insured vehicle on the road. Because I mean, again, it's like, to me, it's always about I love the angle of verifying that these carriers are who they are, because like, I think that there's certain, like, monitoring, for example, that only goes so far, in my opinion. So like I have my tech company's broker carrier, and we are all about reutilizing your in-network carriers.
Amen.
And I'm all about having us listed as a certificate holder, because what if there is a change to that policy? I don't like, as a business owner, Jordan, I don't like variables that say I could get fucked if there's an error. Not saying that there ever is, but insurance companies are not your friend in those moments.
They're not. Insurance companies are in the business of not paying out claims. That's how they survive, brother. Dude, they're not in the. That's someone told me that joke one time. Yeah, I mean, it's all about trust but verify. I mean, you think about like the financial services industry, which I have. That's where I came from, and like that industry, transportation and broker freight specifically is so new. It's like really come on the scene the last 20, 30 years and gained massive market share the last 10. And there's so many things and like best practices that, you would see in some of the older industries that have been around longer, like in financial services, there's a very clear KYC process. And I worked at a massive bank, and we were doing a KYC process on a massive retailer that was going to go public. And I was like, I remember I was a young analyst. I was like, why are we doing this? Like, their stores are everywhere. We know all this information. And through that process, like, we identified fraud and like this element of fraud. And it was using this provider that would go and like find the real information about what was actually happening in those stores. And there was real fraud happening, and it prevented a massive loss for the bank and for investors. And so it's just good practice to be like validating identity and validating claims of what people are making before they get into your network.
No, definitely. And it's the avoidance factor that is key to me, because it's like, again, man, I've been doing this job for a very long time. Like, I've seen a lot of situations where afterwards you're like, how did this happen? But again, back to the fact that insurance companies aren't your friend. They're there to protect themselves in that instance. And, again, I've dealt with loads that have been double brokered that are out there, and then it never arises right away. You pay the original carrier, and I'm using loose air quotes for that. And then the carrier who actually hauled the load comes back to you 6 months later and is like, hey, I've been trying to get payment. And guess what, you guys, they go to your customer as well. They go directly to the customer. And then your customer calls you and says, hey, I thought we paid you on this and everything else. And those are just conversations that you shouldn't have to have, because there are tools that are out there now to help you sniff a lot of that out.
Yeah, I mean, you got it. Like, the reputational risk is huge, and you end up with egg on your face. Like, we talked to one example where the financial loss on the carrier payment was like $3,000, right? They had to pay the second carrier, but they lost a tier 1 shipper, right? They lost a very key account for them, and that's why, again, like, it has to be at the front of the process. You can't let these people in your network to begin with, because once they're in, getting them out is really hard. You're scanning over 20,000 carrier records, and you're paying carrier sales reps and compliance people to be forensic investigators, and that's not a great use of their time. It's not where they need to be spending their time You need to get them, where they're qualified and where their skill sets are, and creating value for you, and just not letting these people in your network in the first place.
Yeah. And from there, it's like that's why there's some synergy between what you've built and what I've got going on too, because then it's all about in-network utilization. How do we use the same carriers time and time again and only use them? Like, that's where your business is always going to grow as a broker, is when you have the same drivers showing up and you have the same core carrier base. Because again, I was like, when I was brought into this industry, Jordan, it was always about build your carrier base up and then only reach out to them for carriers. You go out to the spot market, you go out to the load boards only when your original group of carriers does not have capacity, and that's it. And then it's like, you got to, as Pat Green says, it's trust but verify. And you get that in there, and then you trust these carriers and you build them up. And that's where your book of business is always going to grow in that. But a lot of people want to jump to step 15 and they skip, steps 1 through 10 that are the most important to get that market share from your customer.
Yeah, you're right. Like I've seen and met with over 1,000 brokers in this industry at this point. And the key element of the ones I see that succeed and gain market share, maintain market share, and create differentiation is what you just described. Building that core carrier network and having something they can rely on, having something they can trust and know. The efficiency gains are huge. The trust, because the trust factor, it's more than just it's not just like about the digital interaction or experience as well. It's about the trust factor and the ability to rely on that network and know where they're running and have that proprietary information about the carrier network. All the best brokers, all the big brokers, they do this incredibly well. And I think, you're right. Like when you're first starting out, maybe it's hard to focus the amount of energy on it that you need to, but like that scaling point when you're trying to go from 5 million in gross revenue up to, breaking through like the 10 and 20 range, you got to have these tools to help get get that carrier network validated and then keep reusing it.
Yeah. And, and it's also, furthermore, think about it from your carrier, like when you're solidifying relationships with carriers, if you're able to sniff out that somebody's trying to fraudulently act upon their behalf out there, and you can bring that to their attention.
Oh yeah.
That's where to me, that's where like the real gold is with all of this product is it's protecting the small fleets, because how many of those carriers, again, I don't know the statistics and I'm not going to I try not to use blanket statements, Jordan, but people go
let's throw the blanket out there. Let's do it.
How many of those small carriers have their entire business credit ruined because somebody else is out there operating fraudulently? And how many of them go out of business because of that?
Yeah. So that's the thing we don't talk about a lot. Like we view it very internally, the fraud and the double brokering, those problems is like how it impacts us as the broker freight community. Yeah. But in reality, it's really, really painful for small carriers. Like, so we talked about, they get the claim agent out there and they try and get paid. They send the shipper the claim and they're trying to get paid after they got hurt because the carrier got hurt under that double brokering scheme. A lot of that, sometimes you don't even hear about it. They just go away because they don't have enough money to survive. Like they don't have enough money to last 1 or 2 of those hits. And what you don't see is those carriers may have been running for that the guy who's running the double broker scheme 5 or 6 loads. Yeah. And so they're like, they haven't been paid in 60 days and small fleets don't have the financial wherewithal to withstand that. And so they're the ones that are really getting hurt. That second piece you talked about, their identity being stolen. We saw it try and pay all the time. Some people hack their Yahoo account, hack their Google account. And they're just so exposed when they're using those public domains. They're not protecting their identity. As soon as they get that password and get access to that account, they can impersonate the carrier all they want.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Dude, let's break down some articles. I mean, we don't have to get to them all, Jordan, because at the end of the day, I'm an independent, my show, and kind of do whatever the hell I want. But you know what? Let's hold off on articles because I want to touch on that a little bit more, because I think there's always a lot of software that's out there that, again, it's like, what can it do to protect the carrier community? You know what I mean? And I think that is something it's often an oversight, because people are always like, I'm selling to the broker, but it's like the end user is the carriers, so it's like taking that into consideration as we're building that out. So I like to see that's an angle and a point of emphasis for you guys, because like we got to utilize that to protect our carrier network, because as a broker, your carriers are just as important of a customer as your actual shippers.
And I think it starts in the strategic and the tactical, right? So the strategic is I care about carrier security and identity and making sure that it's protected and done in a way that helps and benefits them. And then the tactical is like when you think about just things like design, like what does the carrier have to look at and think at and use and engage? Is it mobile friendly? Like, is it considered the difference between a 1 truck operator and a 30 truck fleet with multiple users and different roles and responsibilities? You're exactly right. Too many people rush to get a product out, like to serve the broker freight community, and don't think about the carrier experience until the market gets tight and carriers stop using it because they hate it. Right?
Yeah.
If the only time they're going to use it is when the market's loose and you get carriers to do whatever you want because they need the freight, like that's not long-term making the industry better. You're not helping people. You're just taking the leverage of a market effect for a certain period of time. But when it goes away, carriers are going to complain, not use it, run away from it. And you got to think about, like you said, like building through the cycle. Like, what am I trying to do? What kind of experience am I trying to create? And how do I do that so that carriers will adopt it and like it through tight cycles or loose cycles?
Yeah, because I mean that's what it is. It's like you got to look at the the technology that you partner with, and it's like it's the investment that it brings. How much market share can you grow out to by holding yourself down to these principles of vetting the carrier, verifying this information, and then what future business can that lead to? Like that's where my mind always goes with this, because at the end of the day, like what's going to be the real separator in this industry? It's not your technology is great. Don't get me wrong, but your technology is meaningless if you can't have trucks show up. But if you're verifying that the fleets are who they are and you get these trucks to continuously show up, that service is always going to be the greatest separator.
So yeah, I think we're all past the point of like that. Really, like one app is going to rule them all in this industry, right? I think when you look at this, when you look at brokered freight, or I guess when you look at just in total like service industries and how they're impacted by digital transformation. You look at like the travel agent world, the first one to go down when the internet took it on, right? They were an intermediary, all these travel agents in Expedia, Orbitz, Travelocity, all these people came in and just like wrecked shop, and it went from being a person-to-person experience to a digital experience. But the reason that happened was because it was a commoditized transaction. Like it was a singular transaction. You had one person wanting to sit in an airline seat, or you had a hotel room. Like that transaction, there is some complexity to it, but nowhere near to the complexity of what we operate inside of over the road. Truckload, like it's just not even comparable. So I think you got to look at the fragmentation of the underlying transaction, and that is then going to ultimately dictate the fragmentation of the market. And so you see that in brokered freight, you see that in truckload, although some of that has to do with barriers to entry. But I think the ultimate thing where this shakes out, like you just said, like there will be fragmentation in brokered freight, as I think brokers are going to move to becoming more like freight networks, and there will be consolidation, but that fragmentation will still exist because of the fragmentation of the underlying transaction.
I got you. I got you, man. All right. Well, let's jump in. Let's try and get an article in here, Jordan. There's a lot of talk about this right now out there in the market. We've got some comments. Julia, what's going on? Good morning. Drew Driscoll coming in from Axel Logistics. What's up, man? Happy hump day to you. Cody Miller, good fucking morning. Happy freight enthusiast. My man. Lewis, what's up? I appreciate that. And John Radvansky says, if you are a hazmat shipper, you better call in your freight.
Amen.
LaTroy Wilson says, pre-Fleet Tech Inc. is fraud inside. Shaking my head. Trey Lincoln says, great info. He's watching over on YouTube. And Nicholas Leando says, let's go. All right. So first article is from FreightWaves, and it's 2 fuel retailer groups have a message. There will be enough diesel. NATO and Sigma concede tight inventories, but say market will adjust as necessary to get products where needed. Dude, you're out in oil country right now. Dude, you're in Texas, right?
That's right. Yep, Dallas, Texas.
Yeah. So they're talking about this. David Filkov is the executive vice president of government affairs, and Sigma's the largest members tend to be the big gasoline and diesel independent retailers such as Sheetz or Wawa. And they released Tuesday. He says diesel supply is tight and diesel inventories are low. This is a structural problem, but the market is adjusting to get product where it's needed to be as efficiently as possible. Absent a disrupting event, the current period of vulnerable stability can continue. Updated figures on inventories will be released by the EIA on Wednesday. The number has been the focus of the general media attention is days cover, which is the last week was down to less than 26 days. And that figure is derived by taking total inventories and dividing it by average daily consumption. I think a good point to talk about here, you guys, 26 days if they stop producing today. So there's like essentially with today's diesel level, there's a 26-day buffer on top of that. That when they say 26 days left in the diesel supply, that's if they stop producing diesel today. I want to point that out there because I've done a lot of research on this because I get asked this a lot, and from what I found, that was the feedback on that. The inventory levels lead us to see increases in demand or supply. They had said, for example, if a major refinery did shut down for a period of time, or it gets unseasonably cold in the Northeast, call for some concern increase. So, like, what's your thoughts on that, man? Because, like, I think this is a big deal to a lot of people.
Yeah, man. So, not a diesel expert, but I'll give you what I know down here in Texas. Anytime you have like dislocation in that market specifically, because it runs so tight, like you said, it runs 26 days to cover. They have 26 days of inventory in the system because of how tight it runs. Anytime you have the weather disruptions or even economic disruptions, you get volatility in the price. And that ultimately hurts first and foremost the small carriers that don't have the negotiating power to buy off the rack. And so I think you're feeling that. And what's really worrisome is like where the rate environment is and where this is happening in a bad rate environment for small carriers. So, unfortunately, they're going to be the ones that take the first hit on this. And the larger carriers are going to have better stability and insulation from what's going to happen here. But it's not great, and it's happening at a time when the rate environment is really depressed on the spot side.
Yeah, no, and unfortunately, it's going to remain this way for a little bit, and I talk about this a lot, Jordan, is essentially where we are in the market is when we're in the middle of bid season right now. Obviously, people are bidding their 2023 pricing based off of their 2022 contract because it was the higher of the two, and they're going to obviously come in with a rate reduction on that. But just for a piece of positivity from this, though, is that at some point next year, there will be a rebalance. The spot market will catch up to contract, and then people are going to start rolling the dice. You know brokers pretty well, Jordan, from your time over at TriumphPay. We love to roll the dice, and we want to see if we can make more money out on a certain market. And when the freight starts to flow out into the spot market again, which it will at some point next year, it's going to breathe some life back into it. I can't say when that'll happen next year, but I feel at some point next year that's going to happen.
This carriers had 24 months.
Yeah, broker freight lives for this volatility, right? This is where you guys thrive, and your ability. You don't have assets, and so you can be dynamic and nimble and moving in between with the rate environment's moving like this. So this dislocation is part of the value that you guys can capture better than anyone else because of your non-asset nature. So I think it's a great time to be a broker when you have this kind of volatility. It's becoming more pronounced. I would say that. Like I was talking to somebody, the VP of a large broker, and he's been in it 20, 30 years, and he's like, man, it's just different now. It swings so fast back and forth. I mean, just look back to 2018 to where we are today. How many violent swings we've had in the rate environment on the spot side? It's a lot.
But this is the best time to be in freight, no matter what. It's always a good time. If you're going to go into business, don't pay attention to the overall narrative. Just go for it. You'll never regret trying. I can guarantee you that. That article, you guys, is from FreightWave. 2 fuel retail groups have a message. There will be enough diesel. And this, as always, you guys, every single link to the articles we break down is going to be up on the Freight Coach YouTube channel, as well as the Coffee with the Freight Coach audio only replay of this podcast. Because as always, you guys, I want you to do your own research on it. We break down these articles to provide insight, but do your own research, formulate your own opinions, and then run with that. Next article we're going to break down is from the JOC. And M&A in U.S. trucking logistics crosses asset lines. You've seen a lot of it here. From your background on finance and everything, man, when it comes to M&As, when you start to see the uptick like this, like what is your general opinion? Is it they're doing it because there's no better time than now to acquire assets, or is it the trucking market, like for new and used equipment, has been so wishy-washy they would rather buy an existing business than try and wait for the OEMs to backfill their orders?
Oh, dude. Okay, this is a great topic. I love it. So M&A, it differs by the cycle, and so this is not top of the market deals. This is a sliding market type deals, and that's where you see people like Werner, who have an amazing balance sheet and have been running. So they run their business so clean on the financial side. They keep things so clean that when this market happens, now you see them capturing value. And they're exactly right. They're buying these fleets for less than the replacement cost at times would be for the equipment that they're purchasing, or thereabouts very close on a premium basis. and it's just highly accretive to that organization. Their ability to show up on the 11th hour when things are dire, and not saying that all these deals were dire, right? But just like they're not paying premium prices, they're paying sliding market type prices, and that's where they're capturing a ton of value and leveraging their ability to have that balance sheet. This is classic, just great execution of M&A from a strategic that's got a big balance sheet, is to go buy market share when things are not looking pretty out there.
Yeah, because it's like, because they talk about this, because I broke down a couple of these similar articles like this over the last couple of weeks, and it's not a market share play because Warner, JB Hunt, they don't need any help from a sales department. Like, they could call anybody. They have the trailers that they could position anywhere that they would want to get in the door with anybody. It's not from that. I was alluding to that a couple of months ago, and this is why I need like a Jamie that Joe Rogan has, because I need somebody who can just like find that shit for me. Because I know I was talking about this because I had said, I'm like, it has a lot to do with the fact that they're not getting their trucks and trailers, the new and used equipment, filtered through fast enough. So this is their way to come in and be like, here's at least 250 new power units for us that we wanted to add. Oh, and they're already seated with drivers.
Right. Yeah. Speed to market. It's like, the Baylor acquisition, I think, added some capabilities that maybe they didn't have, or they weren't as deep as they were on the equipment side. So that was definitely valuable for them. But the consolidation in times of a down market is in the hands of the incumbents that have that strong balance sheet. It's very different transactions than we saw 10 months ago that were more tech based, more high premium valuation multiples on profitable companies. Like, it's not that season right now. It's cash is king, and who's got it's going to rule.
No, absolutely. And, because it says it right in here. We will continue to acquire regional truckload companies that align well with Ascend. This is a guy from Ascend LLC who said this, and layering in our technology and driver friendly routes and policies while strengthening the network density. Jay Deutsch, who's the president of Fuchs. I'm just going to roll with that. They'll retain investment in the business because and I know that Warner did this exact same thing with Reed TMS, was essentially they purchased it but kept their entire executive team in as is. They're still a standalone business, but they're just under the umbrella of Warner now.
Yeah, and when you read that press release and like you read how he talks about the acquisition, you notice there's not a whole lot of buzzwords in there. Right. Yeah. It's like this is just like the core of like when you got a great operator showing up and buying another probably good operator, but maybe not as great operator as they are. They don't have the visibility and they don't have the breadth of network that like a Warner or a Sind would have, and so they're able to like take what they're buying and inject it into a more efficient system. Like this classic type of roll-up strategy, you saw it on like the food retail side, on the grocery side. And I think, it's been around in trucking for a long time. But there's people that execute at it well, and there's people that don't. I mean, there's the history is lined with people that have failed roll-ups on the trucking side. And generally it involves a lot of debt and probably a private equity sponsor. What you like about these situations is both these entities are publicly traded, low debt ratios, and so they're going to be able to withstand if the market keeps going sideways, or if they end up catching a falling knife, they bought too soon, they're going to be able to withstand it because of their balance sheet.
Yeah, and this is because again, it was like I was talking about this a little bit, Jordan, in the sense of like pay attention, because like last year Knight Swift dumped a bunch of their equipment when it was sky high. So again, I was like, a lot of these things read clues, and this is what I want to see is like, yes, you might not have the balance sheet of a Warner Enterprises, but you can operate in a similar trajectory that they do if you just pay attention to a lot of these clues. And, again, you guys, that article was from the JOC, and it's M&A and U.S. trucking and logistics crosses asset lines. But that's it for today. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. Jordan, how does anybody reach out to you guys to find out more about Highway?
Yeah, check us out on LinkedIn. It's just Jordan Graft, or send me an email at jordan@gohighway.com.
Perfect, man. That's easy enough. Well, that's it for today, you guys. And all I can ask at the end of it is if you saw value in this, you guys share the show, because if you guys see value in it, your network's going to see value in it as well. That's it for today, you guys. We'll be back tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, the Freight Coach Morning Show. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be